She walked to the center of the stage, looked directly at Simon Cowell, and said, "You did." The audience didn't understand. Simon Cowell couldn't speak a single word. He sat completely still. He stared at a 17-year-old girl he had never met. His face fell apart in a way no one in that building had ever seen before. Another Tuesday night taping, the Pasadena Civic Auditorium, packed with 3,000 people. Cameras rolling, millions watching from home. Another hopeful contestant stepping into the spotlight. The judges were in their places, Howie Mandel leaning back in his chair, Heidi Klum scrolling through something on her phone, Sofia Vergara fixing her earring. Simon Cowell sat at the center, black shirt, arms crossed. That familiar expression of measured skepticism settled across his face like something he'd worn so long it had become permanent. Just another audition, just another Tuesday. The girl who walked out looked like she might disappear into the stage. 17 years old. Slim, dark hair pulled back simply. She wore a plain white blouse and dark jeans. Nothing flashy, nothing calculated. She carried no prop, no instrument, just herself. She stood in the spotlight and squinted slightly against the brightness, and she looked, more than anything else, like a kid who had practiced being brave. Terry Crews bounced out to meet her with his enormous, warm smile. "Tell me your name, sweetheart, Maya," she said. "Maya Callahan." "How old are you, Maya?" 17, "and what are you doing for us today?" "I'm going to sing an original song." Her voice was steady, quieter than you'd expect. Terry nodded. "An original. Love that. Who wrote it?" "I did." A small breath. "It took me a while." The audience gave her the gentle, encouraging applause they give everyone at that stage, warm but non-committal. Simon wrote something on his notepad. He had not yet looked at her directly. Terry's voice softened. "Maya, before you start, who are you singing for tonight?" She paused. The kind of pause that changes the temperature of a room. Her eyes moved to Simon Cowell, not to the audience, not to the other judges, directly to Simon. "I'm singing for the man who raised me," she said, "after my mom died." The audience made that sound, that collective exhale, half sympathy and half something else. The feeling of a room realizing it just stepped into something larger than an audition. Heidi Klum's hand moved to her chest. Howie Mandel's posture shifted. Even Simon finally looked up from his notes. "Can you tell us a little more about that?" Terry asked gently. Maya's jaw tightened, just slightly. "I'd rather sing it," she said. But first, she reached into her back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was old. The creases were soft, like it had been folded and unfolded many times. She walked forward. She wasn't walking toward Terry Crews. She was walking toward the judge's table, toward Simon Cowell. She held the paper out to him. The room froze. Simon looked at the paper. Then at her. He didn't reach for it immediately. He sat very still, and something in his face was changing in real time, the way ice changes when heat finds it, not all at once, but irreversibly. He took the paper, unfolded it, read it. Simon Cowell had heard 10,000 singers. He had remained unmoved by 9,000 of them. He had turned indifference into an art form. He couldn't speak a single word. His jaw worked once. Twice, he lowered the paper to the table. He stared at it. Howie Mandel's eyebrows had disappeared beneath his hairline. Heidi Klum pressed both hands to her mouth. Sofia Vergara leaned forward in her chair, her eyes wide, watching Simon the way you watch someone at the edge of something steep. Simon stood up. Slowly, he stepped away from the judge's table. In 15 seasons, he had never once crossed onto the stage floor to meet a contestant before their performance. He did it now. He walked to Maya Callahan. He looked at her face, this 17-year-old girl he had never met, and his voice, when it finally came, was barely above a whisper. "How did you get this?" "My uncle kept it," she said. "He said I'd know when to use it. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 14 years earlier." In 2010, Simon Cowell was at the peak of everything. American Idol was the biggest show in the country. His production company was expanding. His phone never stopped. He was, by any measure, untouchable, insulated from ordinary life by schedules and staff and the machinery of success. He would tell interviewers, when they asked whether he felt connected to regular people, that he understood them through their music. He believed that. He was also wrong in a way he didn't yet know. His longtime sound engineer was a man named Gerald Callahan. 44 years old, 22 years in the business. The kind of professional who is so good at his job that the job becomes invisible. Everything works. No one notices. And that invisibility is the whole point. Gerald had mixed live audio for 3 of Simon's biggest specials. He was quiet, methodical, and deeply reliable. He brought homemade sandwiches to the booth. He laughed at his own jokes before he finished telling them. He was not famous. He never wanted to be. What Gerald was, more than anything else, was a father. His daughter, Maya, was 3 years old. His wife, Diane, was 38. They lived in Glendale, in a house with a yellow front door. Diane had chosen it specifically. Yellow, she said, was a color that made it impossible to come home in a bad mood. On a Wednesday morning in February, Diane Callahan dropped Maya at her mother's house. She drove to her nursing job at a hospital in Burbank. On her way home, a driver ran a red light. She was struck. She died before the ambulance arrived. Maya was 3. She had no memory of her mother's face, only photographs. Gerald sat in the hospital room for 2 hours before he could make himself move. Then, he went and picked up his daughter from his mother-in-law's house and held her for the rest of the night. He made a decision that most people can only make in theory. He would give this child everything she would have had. He would not diminish. He would not collapse. She would grow up knowing she was enough reason to stay standing. But that required something that grief does not leave much room for: money. Gerald's hours were inconsistent. Live sound production is feast and famine, months of work, then weeks of nothing. With childcare costs, and the mortgage, and the ordinary weight of surviving, he was running out of runway fast. His mother-in-law helped when she could. His brother helped when he could. It wasn't enough. He wrote a letter. He had always said later that he didn't know why he wrote it to Simon Cowell specifically. Simon was the most powerful person he had ever stood 20 feet from. And something about the man's directness, the thing everyone else called cruelty, made Gerald believe he might actually read it. Not out of pity, out of efficiency. Simon Cowell did not respond to performance. He responded to honesty. Gerald described his situation plainly. No embellishment, no asking for charity. He laid out the numbers, what he earned, what he owed, what was going to happen to his daughter if nothing changed. He said he was not writing because he expected anything. He said he was writing because someone told him that saying a thing out loud, even if no one answered, sometimes made it lighter to carry. He folded the letter. He had meant to mail it. He never did. He left it in the sound booth after a long shoot, tucked under his notebook. He forgot it was there. Simon found it 3 days later. He had a habit of walking through the set after everyone left, a thinking ritual, a quiet hour before the noise of the next day started. He almost didn't open the folded paper. He almost threw it away. He opened it. He read it twice. He put it in his jacket pocket. He made 2 phone calls that night. The first was to his business manager. The second was to Gerald Callahan's mobile number, which he got from the production records. Gerald answered at 11 in the evening, expecting a work call. Simon told him the mortgage would be handled. Maya's childcare would be covered. A college fund would be started in her name. None of it would be discussed publicly. Not ever. Gerald tried to speak. Simon said she needs a father who can be present. That's all. He hung up. No press release. No social media post. No charitable foundation credit. No one knew. Gerald's brother didn't know. His mother-in-law didn't know. Simon's own publicist didn't know. It was not a story Simon ever told. This wasn't for his image. This was for a 3-year-old girl with a yellow front door and no mother. An image had nothing to do with it. For 14 years, Simon quietly ensured that Maya Callahan had what she needed. Quarterly reports went to his business manager. Gerald sent a note every year at Christmas. Just a few lines, a school photo, a small update. Simon kept every one of them. He thought about Gerald sometimes. The way you think about a piece of a world that you rarely visit, but that you're glad exists. He did not expect anything in return. He did not expect anything at all. He thought that was the end of the story. Until tonight, on the frozen stage of the Pasadena Civic Auditorium. 3,000 people, millions watching from home. Simon Cowell stood looking at a 17-year-old girl. She held his gaze steadily. The letter was on the judge's table behind him. The one Gerald had never sent. The one his brother had found after Gerald died. A sudden stroke. 8 months ago. At 58. Tucked inside a journal, with a sticky note in Gerald's handwriting. For Maya. For when she's ready. The tears came slowly. That was the thing people would talk about afterward. Not that Simon cried, but that he didn't try to stop it. He didn't look away. He didn't reach up to cover his face. He stood in the middle of a stage in front of the entire world and let his face be exactly what it was. Maya stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. She was 17. She had never met him before this moment. She had grown up with his name on a sticky note. A story her father told every year on her birthday. Gerald Callahan believed that people who do good things should not go unnamed. "I needed you to know," she said into his shoulder, her voice carrying through the silence, "that it worked, that I'm okay, that he was a good father because of you." The audience erupted. 3,000 people on their feet at once, the sound crashing through the auditorium like something physical. Heidi Klum was crying without trying to hide it. Sofia Vergara pressed both hands to her face. Howie Mandel stood up from his chair, applauding, his own eyes bright. Share this story if it moved you. Subscribe so you never miss moments like these. Simon stepped back. He looked at Maya for a long moment. Then he nodded once, the kind of nod that means go, and walked back to the judge's table. He sat down. He was not composed. He didn't try to be. Maya turned to face the audience. She closed her eyes for exactly 3 seconds. Then she opened them, and she began to sing. The song was about a yellow door, about waking up in a house where someone always came home, about not remembering a face, but knowing what love feels like anyway, because someone decided that you were worth the decision. Her voice was not technically perfect. It didn't need to be. It was honest in the way that bypasses the part of you that evaluates music. It goes straight to the part of you that has ever been a child who needed someone to stay. When she finished, the silence lasted 4 full seconds. Then, the auditorium came apart. Simon Cowell reached forward. No deliberation. No dramatic pause. He pressed the golden buzzer without a word. Maya stood in the storm of confetti and applause. She looked at the man who had made sure she got here, not to this stage, but to 17 years old, whole and capable, and ready to say thank you. And she smiled. Just smiled. The way you smile when you've done the thing you came to do. Gerald Callahan's brother sat in the third row. Simon's office had quietly arranged the seat the week before. He sat with his hands in his lap and his chin down, and let the sound wash over him. In the months that followed, Simon expanded his private philanthropy significantly, quietly, as always. He established a small fund in Gerald Callahan's name, administered without publicity, for families in the industry who had lost a primary caregiver. Maya went on to the next round of competition. She won. She did not win the show, but she won something harder to manufacture. A room full of people who had been reminded of something true. Gerald Callahan's Christmas notes live in a folder in Simon Cowell's office. He has not moved them. He does not intend to. Some people perform kindness for the audience. Some people just quietly make sure the door stays yellow.